Hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. My name is Sidney Thomas. I'm the founder and the moderator of this channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. The title of this particular presentation is DNA Analysis and the David Messiah. DNA Analysis and the David Messiah. And I continue my usual practice of linking to an audio talk where the guts of the presentation is found. So you can find that there in the description block. And with this transmittal video, my point is just to give a summative kind of overview of that talk as to its main significance and to motivate a little bit the subject. And as I do so now, I realize I really should have titled it DNA-like analysis and the David Messiah, because I'm not at all suggesting that one need to that one rather should go take a reference sample from the tomb of David and or the tomb of Solomon, and then to use that to test prospective candidates for the claim of being that David Messiah. No, that is not the kind of DNA analysis I have in mind. Rather, the kind of DNA analysis I have in mind is the kind that's used in a court of law for the evidentiary sort of significance of DNA analysis. And what do I mean by that? What generally happens when, say, there is a crime committed and there's DNA sort of samples left at the crime scene by the perpetrator, if one has a suspect, then one can take a DNA sample from the suspect and compare with that which was left at the crime scene. So in a sense, what is left at the crime scene is the reference sample, and what is taken now from the suspect is call it a target sample, because he's a suspect, he's a target. And what you want to do is either to exculpate him, rule him out as being a suspect, or inculpate him and use the DNA science to do so. Now, so there are really two lines of two threads of analysis that one would pursue. One is to exculpate, the other is to inculpate. And of the two, it's easier to exculpate generally than to inculpate. For example, what do I mean? If the reference sample is type O, Rh positive, and then you test the suspect and he's type A, well, that's the end of the matter. You can rule him out. He's no longer a suspect. However, if he cannot be ruled out quite simply in that sort of a manner, and indeed when you do the DNA type tests, what is done is that you have several markers or features that's found in the DNA sort of chain that the technicians know how to analyze. And if, for example, they look at one marker and the suspect also has the same, matches that DNA marker, then that tends to inculpate, but it is not sufficient evidence of guilt. Because if that marker occurs, say, in 1/10 of the population in general, that means that you have a 10% chance, purely by accident, of there being a match between the reference sample and the target sample. So one marker is not sufficient. But if you say now have two markers, because of the multiplicative law of probability, if two markers match, the chance now that there's a match purely by accident is now only 1 in 100. Now, that is still not sufficient, I don't think, because that could still happen by chance. But now, if say there are 10 markers that are tested and there's a match for every single marker, now you have a chance purely by accident, so to say, of 1 in 10 raised to the power 10. So it is 1 in 10 billion. And now that starts to strain credulity. And it would be on that basis that one would then say, well, okay, now we can't believe that this happens purely by accident. The reason why you have 10 markers matching between the reference sample found at the crime scene and the sample taken from the suspect has to be because he was the one there at the crime scene and left his blood. So this is how you can use a DNA type analysis to inculpate a suspect. Not that there is still not a chance that there's an error. Okay, I mean, assuming there is no error caused by mishandling of samples and that kind of introduced error, just looking at the logic of the situation. If it's a 1 in a 10 billion chance, well, you're saying that here it's still possible that it's there by accident. But it would strain every juror's credulity, and therefore the fellow is likely to be convicted. That's how DNA science now works in a court. But what I'm suggesting in this talk is that the same kind of analysis ought to apply, and certainly does apply, when one has now to confront the question of determining the truth or falsity of any claim that one may assert as to someone being that David Messiah. Because the same kind of analysis may be applied. And by the way, this kind of analysis applies also in terms of the logic of signs as such. And I addressed that in my book, The Appointed Time, The Tarrying and His Faith, where I spoke about an epistemology of reasonable faith. Because I started it, and I did give an upload not that long ago, where we started with that verse taken from 1 Corinthians verse 22, where it says, the Jews seek after a sign and the Greeks seek after wisdom. So I did a kind of an analysis and breakdown of that thing. But we go by signs, and the Most High uses signs. And this is the sort of logic of the use of signs for one to be convinced of the truth of any sort of prophecy or the truth of any sort of assertion, where it is by signs that we can sort of come to a determination as to whether the prophecy or the claim or the assertion is true as asserted. And that is also why we find in Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, where the Most High says that the luminaries that He's put in the sky, the sun, the moon, and the stars, are used, among others, for signs, because it is something that the adversary is not able to spoof, as powerful as he may otherwise be. Okay, so I want to make it easy for those who now maybe feel a little bit confused as to the claims that I have been making, to have been called, to have been given a mission, and to have been sent, and indeed to be that David Messiah. I'm not kind of making that claim out of any flippancy, because as I do make that claim, I'm well aware of the law pertaining to such claims. It's there in Deuteronomy chapter 18, that if I come forward making such a claim, saying that the Most High has called me and given me a mission and sent me, and knowing that to be a lie as I do so, then I am such a person is subject to death. It is as simple as that. So this is not sort of a matter of some flippancy. And anybody that comes making similar kinds of claims, and indeed they have not been sent, they're exposing themselves to the sanction that is there in Deuteronomy chapter 18. And also in the same sort of law of prophecy, which is what that essentially is, if one comes making such a claim and puts himself on the line in that way, then the children of Yesharalo are put on notice that they must heed that claim, because if they don't, it says the Most High will require it of them. So there is an obligation on the part of those who are of the house of Yesharalo, Israel, to heed such a sign, and in order to do so, they must put their sort of brain cells to work to make some sort of a determination. Okay, so this is a serious matter. Now, I also want to say that it is the same kind of logic that even applies when we came as a people now to the determination that we, the Negro, are the fulfillment of those curses found in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 16 to 68, and also of Genesis chapter 15, verse 13, in terms of the 400 years of servitude to which we have been subject. Because from verse 16 to 68 of Deuteronomy chapter 28, in effect, there are 53 curses. So using the same DNA-like analysis I've just outlined, it is like 53 DNA markers in the blood. And the Negro is is a match rather to the entire set 53 prophecies. Okay, so this is way, way more in the DNA analysis is used in the courtroom to establish paternity, to establish guilt and all of that. 10 markers are all that's usually used. Each marker being taken to have about a 1 in 10 frequency chance of occurring in the general population. So it's like 10 marker matches is a 1 in 10 billion chance that it happened by accident, and that is sufficient to convict. Well, you have 53 matching markers based on Deuteronomy chapter 28, and that's how you know that we, the Negro, are the match to those curses. And if we are the match to those curses, that means we are basically Judah. There's making a very specific claim there. I don't say Yesharalo in general. I'd say Judah, because Genesis 15:13 is actually applies to Judah narrowly, not to all Israel in general. But that's a wrinkle. Let's leave that to one side. So it is the same analysis used there as now we must apply here. So I've put together in this summative transmittal video, although I haven't done it quite so carefully in the audio talk, just 10 signs that apply to me as being that David Messiah. And I've only taken the 10 that I think to be the most salient. On top of the list is the September 23rd, 2017 sign, which I addressed in that upload entitled The David Messiah and the Shouter Baptist Lady. Because September 23rd, 2017, we must now acknowledge as having been that sort of date of birth of the David Messiah. And it is a very powerful sign, because there's only that particular conjunction of the lady clothed with the sun and the moon at her feet and 12 stars around her head, that combined with the Alpha Draconis sign that was also there that same night, September 23rd, 2017 that pertain now to the dragon with the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The sort of frequency of occurrence of that particular conjunction and those two combined, it has to be about 1 in 3,000, once in 3,000 years. So it is a powerful sign. And that was the sign for the birth of that man-child who, we can, with other kind of reasoning, be sure that it references that David Messiah. So whoever comes claiming to be that David Messiah must have a story to tell about what it is happened to them on September 23rd, 2017, that would sort of tally, so to say, or combine with that particular sign of prophecy. And I have a story to tell because, and it's there, I'm not going to repeat that story. It's there in that upload on the Shouter Baptist Lady and the David Messiah. Okay, so this is the most powerful sign. It is so powerful, it is even, I think, a basis for exculpation, or rather in this case, exclusion of certain claims that some people might be advancing as they come claiming to be the Messiah. If they have no story to tell as to September 23rd, 2017, as having been birthed, so to say, as that David Messiah, then they can be excluded. But I use it here as a sign of inclusion, but with a very low frequency rate, certainly for the general population. Okay. And now a bunch of signs that I combine under the term publishing signs, because we find in Isaiah chapter 52 that the David Messiah would publish peace. It's there also in Habakkuk chapter 2 that he would indeed publish, meaning to say write and put out on tables is what is called in Habakkuk. Publish peace, publish some sort of wisdom for the people of Israel to receive. Okay, and what have I published? Well, first the name, because the name of the Most High was somehow lost from what it was given to Moses at Exodus chapter 3 verse 14, which was Iye, and then in Exodus 3:15, which was Yehawa, and the meaning of those variations on the name, that has been lost. And so we have, various suggestions as to Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahuwah, and your Ahaya, all these variations, without any understanding as to how even the name came about and why it means what it means. So the Most High has given me that information. His name is Iye, and it means life, because it's in the original Paleo-Hebrew, it is onomatopoeia for the sound of the breath, E being the in-breath, Ye being the out-breath. And so going from the concrete to the abstract, that is the representation of life. And this is what we as gods, Psalms 82 verses 6 and 7, because this is the whole point of Schoolhouse Earth, is to graduate another batch of gods. So we are to find life eternal with the Father. That's Iye. And this is what is the basis of the covenant the Most High has made with us. So we have to sort of go from eating only of the tree of knowledge to eating of the tree of life. And that is there in Scripture. Yeshua promises that he that overcometh, so we have to overcome this world. We have to overcome the sort of materialistic kinds of temptations of this world, and having done so, to eat of the tree of life. And that's what Yeshua says. He that overcometh, I will give to eat of the hidden manna, to eat of the tree of life. Anyway, the next one, number 3, is in terms of publishing, is the revised Enochian calendar. Because there too there has been confusion. The original calendar given to us by Enoch was at some point lost. And so we are using today the Gregorian calendar, which basically made a point of changing the calendar, as we see there in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. He would think to change times and laws. So, and the Jewish calendar also is in error, because it is based on the sighting of the crescent moon as the basis for determining the new months. And Enoch and in Jubilees we are told that we should not be sighting the moon. So he gave me information as to that and guided me in writing a book, Yahweh's Enochian Calendar. Okay, so that's another a publication that relates to the claim to being a David Messiah. Then he also gave me to write a book on numerology. And since it's a new revealed science, of course, numerology has come down to us from ancient times. But in this sort of book of numerology that he had me to write, he also made me to tie it back first to the 7 days of creation, and also to tie it in with the physical science of acoustics, and use that as a sort of a model for what we know to be the case in terms of the physical science of acoustics, to now extend it into numerology as it now applies to the emotional, spiritual, mental, and psychological spheres of man. So this is new. There's more to it, but I leave that to, I just want to give a summative overview here. Another thing he's given me and urged me and had me to publish is there in the book The Appointed Time, The Tarrying in His Faith, the restoration of Urim and Thummim, which is the big deal. I mean, we see in Ezra and Nehemiah, when they'd come back from the Persian captivity, that there was no priest that could stand up with Urim and Thummim. So, okay, you read it and you decide whether you think that, this is indeed Urim and Thummim. But I assert it, and I assert it without any real, fair, or valid contradiction, that is the case. Number 6, decoding of the words nega and negro, then Gog and Magog and Armageddon, which these are terms which you need to go back to the Paleo-Hebrew even to understand that the word negro means those of the root of nega, David, where nega is the word used for David and has come to mean king. This is huge. And likewise, using the same kind of analysis that the Most High has given me, including Urim and Thummim, to decode the meaning of Gog and Magog, and also to decode the meaning of Armageddon, which is actually Har Amageddedi, which has the same referent as the word Negro. So that the war of Armageddon is actually a war against the rise of the horn or power of the Negro in the world. Because this world is given to us. Then number 7, China and Russia in prophecy. Well, I've just uploaded well, several weeks ago, separate uploads on China in prophecy and Russia being the king of the South. Well, nobody is saying that Russia is the king of the South. Everybody thinks that Russia is the king of the North. Well, okay, you judge for yourself whether what I've put up there is indeed valid. But I have been guided in putting it up, and it's there for your for you to take a look at. And then number 8, the delineation of stumbling blocks. Well, okay, there's a whole chapter in the book, The Coming of David Messiah, where I try to address the essential error of Christian theology, Islamic theology, and even that pertaining to Judaism. The idea indeed that religion as such is a stumbling block. All man-made religion is false. I think I just recently did an upload addressing that subject. And how it even arises, because given that the world in effect was made for the Negro, and a badge of gods is to come out of the Negro, those who are not Negro have sort of taken a bit of objection to that because they wanted to be included in, understandably, but wanted to be included in so bad. And I'm talking now included into the sanctified covenant that he made only with the children of Israel, that they have gone so far as to try to not only to bring themselves in, but to exclude now the Negro. This is the idea of replacement theology. So we have in Christianity the idea that the church is now spiritual Israel. We have in Islamic theology that promise that was given to Israel has been vitiated by us being, infidels, unbelievers, kafirs, and so forth, and now it is there. And of course, the so-called Jews, have been engaging they've stolen our identity. They are essentially imposters, because if they are the Jews, so to say, the people of the book, then we can't be, because we obviously two very different sets of people. So in all the cases, the man-made religions are religions advancing, first of all, a belief or creed as the basis of religion, as opposed to a sacred contract, which is what the Most High made with his chosen. And in all the cases, they advance themselves as a replacement for the real people of the Most High, the ones he has chosen. Anyway, so this is something else that I've published and addressed in the appointed time. It's also again addressed in the Coming of the David Messiah book. And then there are the suffering servant signs, and number 9 here. How beautiful upon the mountain are the feet. And he put me here in this village of Grand Riviere, which is a sort of a hilly village. And there's a kind of I don't want to say it's a private joke, but it's kind of a joke, and I've discussed it in some previous upload. But that's just, I just use Isaiah 52 verse 7 as just one example, because there are other verses in chapters 52 and 53 which also applied to me, and I've addressed in a previous upload, signs of the David Messiah, I believe. A root out of dry ground, he's despised and rejected of men, and etc. and etc. And then number 10 is a sign pertaining to the name, because in Scripture it is said that his name would be Yahweh, our righteousness. Well, when I wrote the book, well, not only The Appointed Time, The Tarrying and His Faith, but also The Coming of David Messiah also, the spiritual name that I took upon myself way back in 2009 when I, made that vow of service to the Most High. It was Malachi Yahya ben Yamin. And I made a play on the name Benjamin because at the time I was persuaded from the 12 tribes chart that I was of the tribe of Benjamin, because according to that 12 tribes chart, those here who are in the Caribbean are of Benjamin. Well, that 12 tribes chart is mistaken in many ways. I've come later to understand. And at the time I took this name upon myself, I would never have thought myself to be of the tribe of Judah, and therefore I would never have thought of myself as being any candidate for the David Messiah. But Benjamin, when you break it down, has that meaning of like Yamin is the right hand or the south. Because if you stand facing the east where the sun rises, then on your right hand is the south. So that's the idea of right-handedness and also of righteousness. And I put Yah in there as a play upon the name Benjamin, but by including the Yah in there, it makes a match to the name Yahweh, our righteousness. Well, you could take that or leave it as you please. And then my given name, Sydney, if you do a sort of a rearranging of the letters, you've got Iye in the name, which is that reference to Iye. And then you have the SDN, Sydney, which is Sadiq, which is that sort of name of the righteous. Okay, and there was a Ka missing, but Ka is just a letter that means on the other side, at the borders, so to say. So, but anyway, so these are the 10 main signs. Anybody that comes claiming to be the David Messiah must have a similar kind of a, if you like, a matching set. Not the same, obviously, but a similar kind. And also, there must be no exculpatory sign in the sense of DNA-like analysis. For example, if they are not of the tribe of Judah, then they cannot be that David Messiah. Simple. And I would go so far as to say if they are not Negro, they cannot be that David Messiah. He has to be a Negro. So there's this fellow there in Israel now, but he's a Hindu by birth, and calls himself Sami the Messiah, Sami Daria. And I mean, what the sense I'm getting, I won't sort of, put it out there as gospel, but the sense I'm getting is he's a Hindu, a caste Hindu, most likely of the Gupta caste, kind of a trader kind of caste. So he can't be the David Messiah. He's not of Judah. If you are of Judah and you're born in India, you're not going to be any kind of a caste Hindu. Okay, and likewise that Rebbe, who was the Rebbe of the Chabad Lubavitch, and forgive me if I get that pronunciation wrong, but he is of that imposter group of people who are not. Revelation 2:9 says, I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So the David Messiah is not going to come from among these impostors. It is just not going to happen. So after the exculpation or the exclusionary kind of signs that rules out certain claimants right from get-go, one now must come to the positive sorts of signs where the DNA-like analysis must apply, and you need to get perhaps at least a matching set of 10 markers to now carry the day as one would in a court of law using DNA analysis. So this is what this is about. I hope it helps those who are of our people, Negro Judah specifically, help them in thinking through, claims that would be made as to who this David Messiah is. Again, I stand before you asserting the claim as a matter of fact that I am that David Messiah, and I pray that you take heed. So with that, I say thank you again for joining me. I give all praises, I give all glory, I give all exaltation, I give all thanks unto the Most High. I try to put none of that upon myself. If anything, I've been a very reluctant sort of candidate for this position. And to those who are still listening, I say shalom.